All right, hey everyone. Let's get started here. So, hello and welcome to the next Ableton session. Today, in this session, we'll be creating a techno track from start to finish, including mixing and export for demo purposes and mastering purposes. Of course, it will be a condensed version, and the basics will be covered to provide a starting point for understanding the overall process. More advanced sessions on production techniques and mixing will follow in the future. I will demonstrate several fundamental techniques and theories that can be applied in any DAW. So if you are an FL Studio user, etc., you can still do the same things using the native functions and tools of your program of choice. So that being said, don't worry too much about getting hung up on what specific plugin I am using or the fact that I'm doing it in Ableton, that sort of thing, because the same fundamental concepts of what we're doing and why will apply to any genre of music. The fact we're making techno, versus drum and bass or house music or something, just different sound palettes, different patterns. But the way that you set up your project and think about creating sounds and arranging them and mixing them, those theories will remain largely unchanged. So the same goes for the DAW too. If you're an FL Studio user or something else, the versions of the plugins I'm using or the native Ableton tools and plugins all have their counterparts in FL Studio to do the same. So a compressor is a compressor, an EQ, etc. if you're in Ableton or another program. So obviously, for the sake of time, I will not be going into as much depth as I would with a real production effort, but we'll be showing the start to finish process in the time we have available today. So that being said, let's get started. Said we're going to make a techno track, right? Yeah. So let's get started. We got our BPM up here again. Let's put that a little bit faster at 142. And then we're going to start with a kick pattern. So I'm going to show you a couple different ways to do that. We can do it one way by using a specific kick drum plugin, such as Kick 2. You can open that and select a variety of different kick sounds to choose from. We'll make our pattern here and start off with just a really simple on the C3 root note, which is C3 is generally the root kind of default, pitch for MIDI for most samplers and synthesizer steps. But Kick 2 actually does the tuning of the kick drum, not from the MIDI note, but from these points here that you change the tuning. You can see it says B1, C4, etc. So we'll make our one MIDI note here, drag it out to this 1/4 bar length, and just loop it, and then we can play that back here and hear our kick sample, and we can tune that like this by clicking, dragging these points. So this is kick 2. This gives you really nice control over percussive waveforms like this. You can see as you drag these points, it changes the waveform a lot, changes the sound of the kick a lot. You have control over different things like the pitch, the amp, the different clicks that make up the transient of the snare. And yeah, that is one way to do it. You can use a plugin like Kick 2. You have plenty of other kick plugins as well there too. You can also synthesize your kick. So we can open Serum here and pull up an example of that. I've got an example here in my presets I've already made. A kick. Yep. That shows you that, and in this case, that note's a little too low. There we go. And this is still way too loud. So synthesizing a kick really isn't that difficult. You can see here I have a sine wave, and the LFO control here, the LFO here is set up triggering as an envelope here with the setting here. So an envelope, triggering every time the node is being triggered, and that is affecting the level, turning up the level of the, it's playing the volume of the sine wave there, and then mixed in with a noise oscillator, the noise giving it that little transient drum sound, like the noisy part of the transient hit of the drum, and then I have a filter also being affected there. I don't have anything else. I mean, I have just some distortion a bit and compressor and EQ a little bit affecting it there. But yeah, synthesizing kicks is pretty basic. The recipe for a kick I can show you in this stock plugin here. I'll just open operator and show you that, here, if we have a sine wave, now we'll bring that down a bit. We have a sine wave playing. We can adjust the envelope of the oscillator itself here and bring it down to this plucky little pluck like that. And then using the pitch oscillator, the pitch envelope, sorry, it's an envelope affecting the pitch, so we have it set as this slope down here, like this, you can see, and the decay being dropped down. So you can hear that, what a kick drum essentially is. A synthesizing one is a sound wave, an oscillator that is going from a high pitch to a low pitch very, very sharply, very suddenly like that, giving it that attack, that transient hit. And you can hear, as you adjust that, how that sound changes. You can add a noise oscillator in there too as a second source. You can hear noise there, adjust the envelope of it, adjust the volume of it. Yeah, there, you essentially, that's the another way to make kicks. Obviously, you do a lot more fine-tuning to get it to be the perfect, kick drum of your dreams and all that. And of course, another way is just to use a kick drum sample. So let's try that. Let's just go into the search up here, type in 909, go to all results, 909 kick, and find one here. Now, there, we have this 909 kick sample. Now, if we click and drag it in here, it'll open it one way, but you can also, with the MIDI channel selected, you can double-click and it'll open it into a sampler. Turn the volume of it up a bit. There. And we have it playing at our default C3 note there. So let's make it sound a bit better. So we've got a kick drum loaded there. The controls here for the sampler adjust the sustain and decay of the sample playback. You can make it really short or long. Adjusting it that way, we'll have it playing open like that. And then let's process it. I just opened up an audio effect rack that I have saved with some basic utilities that I use on pretty much everything. If you'll recall, in the last session I discussed making these audio effect racks or instrument racks via grouping things and then changing the name here and saving them for future use. So here you see I have a utility function. This is a volume, width, balance, etc. Function. And then I have an EQ here. We'll just open up this EQ, and this is Pro Q4, but you could do the same thing with a stock Ableton plugin. If you put an EQ8 there, you have same kind of control. So a bit of EQ shaping. This is the glue compressor that's found over here. The glue compressor is a certain type of compressor that has certain function I won't go into now, but you could turn down the threshold a bit till it starts triggering the compressor slightly if you want. I have the attack set high and the release set low so that it doesn't clip the transients on it. It's more like pressing and pulling up the rest of the sound as you pass the transient. As you turn up this makeup gain function here, you can see the soft clip enabled here and the clip icon, the clip button lighting up there as I turn up the makeup gain here. But I don't really want to clip in this case because I don't want to be clipping the transient of the kick. So I'm putting a transient shaper plugin, Native Instruments Transient Master in this case, on it. I don't know about, is there stock Ableton Transient Shaper? I don't actually, there may be some kind of way to do it, but I don't think so actually. Transient shaper plugins, you can find a few varieties. Kilohertz one works fine. Kilohertz, Transient Master, Native Instruments Transient Master is good. That you can hear the difference on the attack of that. So turn it up. Give it a bit more of a whack, transient sound. Just turn that up a little bit, and yeah. Then put a limiter after that with the attack set down, release, set down, look ahead, turned up a little bit, and just boosting it with the limiter a little bit so that you're flattening out the signal essentially. And with the really low attack time and low release time, channel link and a little bit of look ahead, you're clipping the transient of the kick there. So yeah, we have a basic kick started. Good habits, going to save, as something so we don't lose our work if something happens. And then let's create a bass. So in the second MIDI channel, let's open an operator and program in some notes. Let's see here. And you can just double click in again to program these notes. Remember, I had a picture saved before, something I like. Let's see. Okay. What was this? Okay. And again, remember, you can turn this on if you want to hear the notes as you're clicking them in. Program in something like that. Adjust the velocity down here, these bars, adjust the velocity of the notes being triggered. The velocity corresponding to the volume, the velocity of the note that's being triggered. Create this section, click and drag to select the first half of it, Control L to loop it, Control A to select all of it, or click and drag to select all the notes, and then shift down an octave, down 2 octaves, and let's play that with our kick. Turn the volume up. Yeah, turn off the other oscillators, and we will adjust the note length in this case, not with the envelope of the oscillator itself here, but with the filter. So we'll go to the filter section, open up the filter, turn that down to somewhere around there, And then use the envelope control down here, use the envelope to open up the filter and adjust the timing of the envelope here. There we go. Sounds okay. Now, over here, the master output section, we'll set the voices as 1. Doesn't really matter, but we'll just put 1 voice there, and yeah, we'll put another auto filter, Ableton auto filter after that as well. Turn that down, and use the envelope of the filter to also turn it up a bit. There we go. And then we'll put the same effects rack with the utility EQ, here. See the output levels of the meters here in between the plugins you're getting, which are a rough indication of the volume that you're outputting between. You can see if it's lighting up red, you can see that you may want to turn it down a little bit in between stages to avoid clipping too much. Clipping digital meters in plugins doesn't always sound bad. In some musical styles like drum and bass, it's actually utilized creatively quite a bit as part of the sound that people are going for. But in this clean bass sound, for example, you can hear what happens if I turn it up and clip it basically a bit too loud. You can if I really turn it up, you can hear that clipping distortion. So in that case, we're just going to keep it clean sounding. And yeah, okay. So we have a basic bass pattern made, kick pattern made. Going to shift, click, select both of those, and then Control G to group them, or right click, group them. If you don't know the hotkey for stuff, if you don't have the hotkeys memorized for things, you can always just right click on things and select the same option. So group those two, and then rename, or Control R, to kick, bass, bus, and then put go back to this effects rack here and just Control, click, and drag to duplicate it onto this same channel here. And then so you can see here, I have that utility in the first part of the effects of this effects rack, and that allows me just to easily and quickly adjust the input volume of the two groups coming into the two channels coming into this group, and then I can take a look at it here. And then this indicator on the EQ tells you if it's clipping or peaking or not. You can see we're at minus 3.8. Level's fine. Turn this up a little bit. And then also put I'm going to put another transient shaper on it. Just turn that up a little bit. And another limiter on that. And just turn this up to clip these peaks a little bit. There. Okay. Now let's do some compression on the bass. I'll show you a few ways to do that as well too. You can just open up the effects rack, put a compressor on it, and then set the compressor, open this side arrow here to open up the sidechain. External source of the sidechain coming from the kick here in the list. And then you can see the kick there. You can also hit this headphone icon here to hear the source, the sidechain source, to monitor the sidechain source. And then you can turn down the threshold to just trigger the sidechain of the compression like that. Get some compression happening here. Another way to do it, which I like to do, is you can create a new MIDI clip. Control-Shift-T to create a new MIDI clip, or right-click, insert MIDI track, and then Control-Click-Drag to duplicate the same kick MIDI pattern over, and then you just have an empty MIDI channel. Call that kick trig L1, and then open up. You can use this tool. Oops, wrong channel. You can use this tool, this plugin called Shaper Box. Pretty easy to find, and the volume function of it, and set the volume function of it as a sidechain curve like this. And with doing this, you want to have the initial low point, because this is the curve of the volume. You want to have that initial low point of the volume, which will tell you down here. You can set it forward to like, a couple milliseconds, like there we go, 5 millisecond attack, of this sidechain, volume automation triggering like that. And then you send the output of that blank MIDI channel, that trig MIDI channel, the MIDI out here, send that to the operator bass, and then to the Shaper Box plugin here. So now when we play that, we have it being triggered here, and we need to change the resolution of it down to quarter bar here, and then you can see our kicks happening here. And you can hear that real strong sidechain. Yep. Oops. Yeah, you can hear that real strong sidechain being triggered like that, which is the Shaper Box. And with this is nice because you can visually adjust the curve of, you can see the kick drum here, and adjust the curve of it to kind of fit, the space there, and then adjust the amount of the sidechain too here. So that's using a third-party plugin to do sidechaining as well, another method. We can just keep it with the stock one like this for now. It's fine too. Yeah. There's multiple ways you can approach that. But anyways, we have our kick trig here. I'll put that up here and use that for other stuff. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so we have a basic bass and kick pattern made. Let's add some more to it. Let's make the kick sound a little better too. I'll go up and add an effects plugin to it, a saturation or distortion plugin. You could just by adding some saturation to some distortion mildly to a kick, you can hear an effect. Really fatten it up with some harmonic content. You could do that using an Ableton stock effect to like saturator. Here, just put that there. Turn up saturator a little bit. You can hear it begin to distort it. So you can turn it up a bit, and then also adjust the dry wet down to apply just a little bit. You can choose your clipping mode here, different kinds of clips here. Just leave it like that for now. Okay, and yeah, then let's add some percussion. I'll add a new MIDI track and look for a 909, 909 hat, 909, open, closed hi-hats here. Open the closed hi-hat on this one, create a clip of just go in and adjust in the sampler, again, that sustain and decay here. Dial it in like that. And the filter of the, this is simpler, actually. It's sampler and simpler, the instruments, in Ableton over here. Samplers, a few more advanced features. Simpler, if you just double click samples in a MIDI track, it'll automatically open it into the simpler. And then, so you can use the filter though in simpler here to, let's change it to a high pass filter and just pull down the filter like that a bit. Put in the same EQ plugin. Again, you can use the Ableton stock EQ, do the same thing. Just put that frequency up to cutting frequencies we want a bit. And yeah, now new track, and let's do the same process with the 909 open hi-hat. Put it on the offbeat like that. Click, drag, select, loop, just that section. I mean, you can click out the whole measure if you want, the whole bar, the whole one measure if you want, but you can also just make this pattern and loop that, of course. Now, same thing. Oh, see, in this case, you can see the playback line of the sampler here, and you can see that it's only playing as long as the MIDI note is. So we'll make that longer, like that, and then we'll play back a longer sample, which we can still adjust with the decay. That's something you can easily adjust. Say if you select that sampler, Control G to group it, then you have these macro knobs open, and then you can map, right click on the decay, map to macro 1, and you have that decay. Map for easy easy automation use in the future. Do the same thing with the filter, go back to the high pass. Same thing with the effects rack with the EQ. All right, we have some instruments going. Now, let's duplicate this pattern here and change the one that we have selected here. And we're going to remove the percussion hit on the space where the, you can click and select, you can shift and click select multiple MIDI tracks. That's like one of the changes in newer versions of Live, to see them both at the same time. So we're just getting rid of this hi-hat hit in the space where the open hi-hat is triggering to create that kind of flow like that. Let's shift select both of those, group them, Control R, rename them. Perk, I like to call things in a group, perk bus or group, because then I can easily identify it in a list and remember what it is. And we'll put that Same kind of EQ on here. And let's go through and label things again. This is easier. So this is the kick. This was the sub bass. This is the open hat. This is the closed hat. Okay. So we've got that started with some percussion, simple basic groove going. And so let's add some character, some identity to the track. So this one example, you could create an atmosphere, another MIDI track, open up a sampler instrument. This is an example of a difference between sampler and simpler. So open up a sampler, and in effect, or a sample, let's look for a crash sample. Not that kind of crash. There we go. A crash sample. It doesn't have to be a crash sample. It can be anything, really. And then we're going to, but just this loud crash sample, and we're going to trigger the sustain mode. Sustain mode right now is on just single arrow forward and stop, just single shot play mode. And if you put it on this back and forth, this will turn it into a looping sample. And then up here, where your mouse turns into this bracket shape, you can adjust the loop and have the sample triggering and then looping in a certain spot. And this is a really nice way to play rides, and something I'll probably do that later in the track anyways. But in this case, we're going to put a audio effect on it, a corpus resonator on that. And just going to have this triggering. Now we're going to make this longer. And then we're going to turn up the corpus full dry wet. Change the model. Move it around a bit. Like that. You can tune this. And we have it on full dry wet. And we're going to just add a delay and reverb to it. Put the reverb on full wet too. You don't need the delay actually, just to create a little atmosphere, just kind of noise like that. We'll put the same effect track on it. So yeah, the same effect track that I use all the time. You could see this is an example of, making a utility rack that you use for like every kind of purpose. Like you're pretty much always going to be EQing a sound. So just having that set up to like kind of ready to go can be really useful. Got some volume adjustment on it. Change the start point of the sampler here. Just gonna, speaking of adjusting volume, I'm just gonna put volume control on the output of the stream level here, so it's not too loud. There we go. That's better. You can adjust the start of the sample here with this arrow over here, this start point. There we go. atmosphere thing. We'll add Atmos. Now let's get into more identity, fun stuff with the track. So this is where you could dig through for, like, say, a sample of something, something to sample, something to work with. I found something to start with to spare the time of going through, digging through samples for the sake of the stream, I found this drum loop here that has this nice tonal qualities to it, of those tonal hits there. You can see it's at tempo is at 165, but it doesn't matter if you click and drag. If you put this in an audio track just as a clip, it will automatically warp it to the tempo of the song. You can see the warp here, and the warp is on method repitch. Repitch algorithm sounds the best for warping things. Unless you really want to keep it at the same pitch, then you can put it at complex or complex pro. Keep it at repitch to warp it down, and hear this. I'm going to take out that end, so I'm just going to, you can click and drag to highlight, Control L, or you can also adjust that bar at the top, again, where it turns into that bracket shape. You can adjust the loop length that way. We'll set it to just the first half of the sample to avoid that change in the end. Put the same effects rec on it. Turn down the volume a little bit. Adjust this. ProQ from FabFilter has this headphone monitoring feature here that allows you to listen to what you're cutting out of the frequency. When you click and hold that, you can hear what you're removing, the low frequencies, and you can hear that, okay, up here is where stuff I want to hear in the sample, so I'm not going to cut that, but I'm going to go down to like there, and then that's really those tonal hits we want to emphasize. Let's add some effects to it. Go back and add a reverb to it. Increase the decay of the reverb a little bit. Got to do that with this one. Increase the decay of the reverb. So there are differences between sending a track to an effects send, like I could instead of putting the reverb in line here, I could send it to the effects send here. And that's just different ways to process with effects that achieve different results. Like, the main difference is that sending this to a send, you get a copy of this playing in the channel here, and then you get a copy of it being sent, coming through the sends over here. So you just get different, but you get a different kinds of adjustment and different results as if you just put the effect directly on the channel itself. In this case, I'm just going to put it right on the channel itself, so I have control over only the reverb just for this sound, rather than in an effects send where you could have a lot of things. But you can try that too. You can also hear that sending it to that effect send sounds good too. Okay, so now with that stuff being created so far, we got our little groove going. I'm going to select everything that is not the kick and bass bus. See, I have the kick and the bass separated so they can do their own thing here. And the reason why, too, is because I can select the rest of it and group that and call that group the sidechain bus. And then I have this separate group of everything that's not the kick and bass. I can filter out the sub frequency from that and adjust the volume of it. Then I have control over this everything that's not the kick and bass. And in that case, I will be doing compression to it. So with the stock compressor, of course, I can just use the stock compressor like we did before and set the external source to the kick, like this. You hear that sidechain happening. You can adjust the amount of it. Another interesting way to use this compressor like this, because you see when it's triggering off of the kick, it's triggering off of this actual kick, actual kick wave like that. That gives you this pointed shape, of the the volume of the kick that's coming through. Another way to use that differently would be to you can create another MIDI track and put the same MIDI pattern in, like we did for creating this blank trigger track. I actually could have just duplicated that. So we'll duplicate that kick trigger, but in this case, we're making a click track. So we're putting like an operator synth on it and having that operator synth just play a noise burst, which, won't sound, good. We're gonna put on, but just to show you, that'll sound like just this click. Oops, nope. We're putting this, the envelope of the oscillator down to being this 2 millisecond long click. Like that. Or you could do, 5 millisecond click like that. So we have just this click track then, and we're going to turn that off so we don't hear it. But then we can use that trigger click to trigger the compressor instead of that kick sample, and you'll see we get the different result from that. Here's the kick sound wave coming through. But if we use that click track instead, change that to we set it as that sidechain click 01. Well, it's just another way to it's actually not that different because the kick isn't super long, but that's just another way to create a click track that, yeah, I mean, see the spikes, you can adjust the length of it. You can set it at, like, say, 2 milliseconds and have an even shorter click. And that can just be a sharper way of triggering the compressor. Gives you slightly different control over the compression, like that. And when you're doing that, I'm going to open up this button down here. We'll open up the, well, there are options you can select, and the arrow in the far bottom right corner here, you can select that, open that up and hit track options, and then you get track delay, where you can change the timing of individual tracks. In this case, we're going to go down into -4. Forgot to do that for this one too. You're going to set this to trigger just for a couple milliseconds ahead of the timing of the track. And as you can see, when we have the compressor triggering with an attack of, say, 1 millisecond or 2 milliseconds, then it helps offset that attack time to keep it like this on. And you can adjust the release time to change the slope of the compressor triggering there. You can just keep it at the basic like this now. So yeah. Now we have Now we have compression happening, sidechain compression happening to this sidechain bus to really help keep that kick and bass separate punching through. And yeah, let's add another break to it here in our audio track. Like I said, I went through some breaks before to spare the time of just, sifting through samples, but let's grab another drum break and give some more percussion variety. Like we made our percussion here with the classic hi-hats and stuff. Let's give it another, some other percussion variety to it here. Yeah. So we got some drum grooves. I know some things going along with this. Add a little more percussive variety, just to have something else stuff we can turn on and off. Like I said, I grabbed a few other drum loops, too. Oh, okay. So there, like I drag something into an audio channel, and it creates it in a new channel, but it's outside of this group, as you can see. So you can just click and drag it into the group like that, or drag it, anywhere else in the group. But we want to put that inside the group, like the other stuff. And yeah, again, replicate, do some EQing, volume management to it. Okay, let's see here. We did some, we created a kick pattern and bass pattern, did some basic processing of the kick and the bass here. And then basic processing of, use some samples and different drum loops to help fill out the track. We can create some additional patterns to liven it up a little bit. So let's create another drum part in our percussion bus over here, and create a clap. Let's just do a 909 clap part here. Make a pattern of, pretty straightforward, like, yeah, again, we'll go to the filter that high pass down a bit. And add an EQ to it. I keep using this EQ because, I like the FabFilter Pro Q, but of course, again, you could do it with the stock one too, just using the EQ8. Don't let that, deter you or confuse you. Same deal, just put the cut, high and low cut like that, and again, remember, you can open it larger with this arrow button here, adjust the size of that here to have a better view. Yeah, So same principle. Okay, so we have a flat pattern to play with as well. Let's create something else. So I'll click in here and, or, you can also right click, insert MIDI track, drag the MIDI track into our group, into our sidechain group here. And let's do cowbell. Let's do cowbell 808. Yeah. Open it up in that channel there. Place a hit here. Let's move it down. Make that louder. Do the filtering of it. Solo to listen to it. And let's put that resonator on it again. That corpus resonator. Yeah, corpus is that resonator. D1, we'll tune this down here. We'll tune that to D sharp. Yeah, 152. We'll do D4. Do some queuing on it again. Okay, so that sounds all right. I mean, like that's the thing I can't spend, like a real amount of time on is like dialing stuff in to get it sounding like, oh yeah, perfect. Like I really, really happy with that. We're aiming for close enough in the session, right? To fill out a full track and see how we're doing here on time again. Yeah, so we're already at the hour. So we've got let's make a quick arrangement and do the export, mix down and export like I was talking about doing. So we've got a couple parts in a variety spread out here. So all playing together, that's what they're like. But if we go through and select our clips here, select the clip and then go all the way across, select the whole row of clips like this. You see how they're all highlighted there. Select the whole row of clips and then copy, and then again go into the arrangement view and make sure we're up in the top where we're going to paste them from the top here. Top, first bar up here, and then paste. And they're all in the track now. And then while it's highlighted, we can hit Control D to duplicate it, spread it out like that, and then hit this orange play icon. Remember this up here? This triggers all of the channels to play in arrangement view, moving over from clip view. And then we've got all the parts here triggered to play. But we can make our arrangement with that starting point. We've got our drum loops and other things here. I'm going to go through and select the first chunk of it. Again, click in one corner, hold shift, click in the opposite corner you want to select, and then hit 0 to just turn those clips off. And now we're playing just from the beginning. The bass. Maybe we'll turn the atmosphere on there. This, like that. Now we could turn on this sample here, Oh, maybe we'll turn that on here and turn on the closed hat samples here. And so in this case, remember we don't have all those hits turned on, make room for the open hi-hat. So let's select this clip here and add that back into it, and then change the color of it so we know that it's a different one. And then, back to our green ones, here are the other ones. We'll have this open like that. And then when we get here, we can turn on the open hi-hats, like that. So I pasted all the samples, all the clips over to here to lay them out, and just lay them all out, covering the whole grid. But then you can turn them off and turn them on in parts to create the variation that you want, is one technique. So you have it turned off, and then you can select them, turning them on and off, turning them on and off with the 0 key, like that. So adjust, when they're coming in and out. Let's add a vocal sample to this. Let's add another vocal sample. Let's do this in arrangement view instead of working in clip view. So we'll create a new audio track. Again, you can right click and create audio track. I said to spare digging around, I had sample. Oh no, that's right. This one, I'm going to play this in a sampler. So again, go down and open a sampler. That opened it down here. We'll click and drag it up into our sidechain bus. That audio track, so we don't need it. And then go back in and take our vocal sample here. And click and drag it into the sample thing here. And then you can hear it playing. You can see there's this gap in the you can click and drag with the magnifying glass to zoom in. There's this gap when the sample's playing. You can adjust the start point there to make it play on key like that, or on, play right away. And then just double click here to create a MIDI clip in that spot. You can see what I'm triggering there is this note. Let's drag that out. Make some pattern like that with it. Maybe move it off the grid a little, move it on the grid a little bit. Let's make the longer, make that 2 bars like this. Yeah, again, some EQing on it. So same thing of just, you know, we can spread this out, like turn them all off and then turn them on at will. Yeah, just doing kind of a quick arrangement, you know, there. Okay, let's create a breakdown here. You know, so we'll do that by going to our kick and bass bus here. You know, remember just the kick and bass here. And then to that bus, we'll add a audio effect, we'll add a auto filter, and we'll use the filter in that spot there. We'll put in a high pass filter. Like that. And we'll right click on the power button there, show automation, and we'll have it turned on here. We'll have it turned on there, and then we'll turn it off the rest of the track there so that it just turns on when we reach that section. And then when we get to that one section there, the filter turns on, and so we'll turn the kicks off at that spot too then. And we'll turn the, remember you can go back and forth between automation mode and normal mode here. We'll turn the percussion off there. Turn these samples off there. We'll do some automation to the bass there. We'll go down to the drive of the filter here for the bass, and we can hear what that sounds like when we turn it up, you know? Like that. So we'll keep it down at 0 where we want it, right click on it, show automation, and then we'll create this little swell. You can zoom in. Create this little swell there, like that, you know, as it goes in there. Like that. Let's also create swell of automation for the sends. For that, here, over here with the sends, we'll right-click show automation for that, and do the same kind of pattern there, just creating this ramp up for the bass, or for the bass being sent to the reverb and the delay. Back to the full drop here. Yeah, and the vocals on there. And then let's go down to our reverb sends, reverb and delay sends here, and go to that channel where it is just set like that, and let's put an EQ on it, and just, you know, filter out the low stuff that we don't want in the EQ, drop down the low mids a little bit, and then do the same for the delay here. And you can see when we're just, you know, adjusting that a little bit. And okay, so let's cut this a little shorter for time then, you know, just wrap up. So we have a basic arrangement here we can be said is made. Let's just make, you know, a little like an outro for it kind of, you know, thing. We're turning off this. Yeah, let's turn that back on here in the break. Yeah, do a little sweep out at the end with this, the sends for this, this effect here. Like that, and yeah, let's call that our arrangement of a track, right? So we've made a bunch of parts. We have turned them on and off to create an arrangement. Let's just, you know, experiment with that a little bit more here. And yeah, let's listen to the main idea of the track. You know, we've got this first drop. Got this. The drop and the little break here, you know. Okay, so next let's talk about mixing down the track. Now, see, here's the thing. So we've gone through each individual track and done our EQing and our processing for the track to get it placed both in frequency content from the EQing and volume or level management from the levels that we've set in the channel themselves first with the gain staging we've done with the different plugins here, and then adjusting the level of the fader, again, which you can open the faders here, channel faders, in the arrangement view to see it like that too. So the first stage of gain staging is in the channel itself with these, adjustments we've done here, like the, the makeup gain that we're applying here, the, gain coming out of the plugin itself, etc. And then the second final stage of it, then we are adjusting the level of the final output of that channel with the faders here. So the fact that we've done those basic processes in each of the channels to begin with, and we have the sounds placed how we want them to sound basically in the arrangement, that makes the job of mixing a lot easier and a lot faster because you are already creating the sound to fill the frequency content and the volume in the placement in the arrangement by when you're creating the track, or when you're creating the channel of the sound itself. So then when it comes down to mixing the overall project, that is a lot easier because you already have that done to that basic level. So okay. So once that is done, the mixdown becomes relatively simple, and the sort of less is more approach to managing, of not micromanaging a mix becomes a lot more straightforward. Generally speaking, with mixing, if you have your sounds of the track created, like I said, in the way that you want them to fit into the song itself, in terms of managing the source of the sample to begin with, the frequency content management with EQing, and then the final output level of the sound and the level of it in the mix, then you don't have to, basically you don't have to go crazy with micromanaging mixing in your mixdown. And often more micromanaging, trying to do more, thinking you have to have lots of plugins on a mix, thinking you have to be doing a lot to a mix, isn't necessarily the best result, actually. You want to be fixing issues and correcting errors, fixing things in your mix, of course, but you think about what you're doing and why and what the real sound result of that is. So to kind of wrap this up, let's see, we're going to go into demonstrating a mixdown. Yeah, and of course, one, your most useful tools for doing a good mix is using a reference track. So in that case, let's go into creating an audio track, putting it up here at the top outside of the project, and then finding a techno track, like something I was playing before, just using as an example, a techno track. You want to use a reference track that's relatively similar to the material that you are working on, but you put the reference track into another audio track like this, and then down here where it says going out to main, instead of sending it to the main out, you want to send it to the external output of the source of your audio, like your sound card or whatever you're listening to. And then you can solo it, make sure you turn it down because it can be a little louder, and play it and listen to it. And see, now you're not hearing it. I'll put it in the master so you can master out so you can actually hear it. Then you can actually hear it, like what I'm hearing. Oh, no, not that. Main, there we go. So, okay. So we're listening to a reference track as a basic reference guide. We want something at a similar level to our project. We have it soloed, we can unsolo it. We can hear the difference with our track. Get it relatively the same volume. listening to the reference track, and what we're listening for are basic things like how loud is the kick? What does the kick sound like? You know, do you really hear the transient punching through? Or do you, how loud is the bass? How loud is the percussion? General volumes of things like that. Using that as a guideline of how loud should those things be in my mix, right? Of course, after certain experience working with projects, you just kind of get a feel for it. But especially when you're starting out, and even for every professional to make a good mix, you use a reference track that helps you reference how things should sound in an example of what you consider to be sounding good, your reference track. So let's listen to that for a second. So let's listen to the kick, Okay, and then how loud is our kick? Maybe our kick could be a little bit louder or have a little more of the, body and the high, well, different kick sounds, but But the punch of our kick is, loud like that. So, okay, what about the percussion sounds? Things like the hi-hats, how loud are those here? And how loud are ours? Ours could maybe be a little bit louder. Let's turn those up. How loud should that vocal sample, kind of our lead in a way, how loud should that be? Well, let's listen here. There was a lead, pattern right here in the example. Let's listen to that. Pretty loud, like that. How does ours sound then in comparison? Okay, pretty decent. So just demonstrating that, again, not going into, full detail and everything with the time we have right now, but that's how you're using a reference track to, reference things and adjust your mix and have an idea of how to adjust it. But again, I have this reference being played through the main here so that you guys can hear it in the stream, but that's not how you want to use it actually, because then it's being sent through your processing you have on your main, on your master channel out like this. So you want to have it sent to the extension out and then your sound card here. So there, there I hear it, but now you're not hearing it because it's being sent directly to my sound card, directly to my headphones, bypassing the processing that I'm doing on the master channel to our track. So that's using a reference track. Got that up there, turned off. Now let's do a mix down on the master channel here. We've got our processing for the kick and bass bus here, our processing for the sidechain bus here, and then the master bus here. Let's do some basic things. I will show you the basic, I will show you the mastering chain that I'm using essentially in a basic function, and kind of what I'm doing and why. And again, don't worry about the plugins that I'm using themselves, because it's the principles of what you're doing and why that is what matters. So, got this chain of plugins here. These are some plugins from Acoustica Audio, among others. They're a good company. Again, don't worry about the plugin companies that I'm using and stuff. It's not saying you have to use this plugin or anything, but this is a saturator plugin. It's going to keep that utility on there, adjusting the stream output level. This is a saturator plugin. It's adding some saturation, just like the saturator in Ableton, the stock saturator is doing too. For the low and high frequencies like this. Next is a other kind of like preamp and saturation plugin. Next is an EQ plugin. This is just a fancy EQ. You have your high shelf up here and your low shelf down here. You've got different selectable frequencies here you can adjust. Let's put it on the, the 1.5K and turn that up a little bit. Let's put this on the 11K and turn it up a little bit. Turn down the output of it here. Yeah, because the output of this is really loud now. And then into the multiband that we have here, which I'd use really lightly in this setting. That this is just applying some light multiband dynamics, multiband compression to it. You can see there nicely the different bands that it's doing. Yeah, final one is well, final one of these is this is just a clipper and compressor. Just have the compressor working a bit here, turning down the compressor threshold until it's triggering down here a bit, turning up the makeup gain, turning up the clipper. Flip it a little bit, some saturation here. And then a limiter out here on the end. So okay, so again, like I said, don't worry so much about these specific plugins I'm using. The takeaway should use from this is, what do I have here? I have a saturation plugin, so you could use like an Ableton saturator here. And then I've got, this is just another saturator, you can ignore that basically. Then I've got an EQ here, and then this is a multiband dynamics plugin there. And then this final one was a compressor clipper. Let's use the blue compressor there. And yeah, and then the limiter on the end. And we'll use the Ableton limiter there and not use this third-party one. So there, again, we've got something similar happening. We can bump a few dBs of drive on the saturator to saturate it a bit. Let's put a low cut on the filter and set that at like, the low frequency, high frequency cut, shape the sound here a bit. And you can see I'm getting high levels coming into this, so I will put a utility in front of that and turn down the input by quite a bit. And yeah, got our... Oh, that's right. I wanted to show you guys this cool new plugin that's in Ableton 12 called Roar. That's another multi-band processor. It's in the audio effects here, Roar. Yeah, low, medium, high. Has saturation here built in. It's the amount here, drive amount. It's just kind of a cool stock, multi-band saturation, multi-band dynamics plugin a bit too. We can play with that a bit, turn this up a little bit. Just using it a little bit because if you go real high with it, it'll create lots of, it'll just be too strong. But you can experiment and hear that, if you turn the drive up, you can hear what it sounds like. And there, now we've got the clipper on the compressor here. makeup gain up a little bit, turn the threshold of the compressor down that the compressor is triggering. Okay, so we have a basic mixing, chain set up here with some saturation that just adds, to the saturation, to the kind of fullness of the sound. I've got some EQing here, a bit of dynamics control here. We could put a multi-dynamics plugin on there as well, and just see how that affects it with adjusting, using specific tools like the multiband dynamics plugin takes some learning, because it has several functions that, all these numbers, all these buttons and stuff that do have a bit of a learning curve to them. But let's just start with opening the multiband dynamics presets here and putting the OTT preset on it, and then putting that on like 10%, because it's way too overkill if we are using more than that. Up a little bit. Yeah, so I have a basic little mastering chain, mixing chain set up there. And again, using the reference track to kind of compare how that sounds. See, this is where listening to the reference track coming out through the main master channel now, it's running through all of our plugins here, which we don't want. So that's why you send it out to the separate external out of your sound source to hear it without that processing, but then you reference it, listening to that. And compare that to how your mix, sounds. Again, gauging are my claps loud enough? Are they too loud? That kind of stuff, how the frequency content of your reference track sounds. Yeah, okay. And so then let's see that we have a decent mix made here. Give it a listen at this part and see how it sounds. Okay, yeah, decent, for our purposes right now, decent. So last part is let's talk about exporting. Again, we'll go into topics of mixing and these things a lot more in depth with separate sections about it. The goal of today's session was just to do a more advanced arrangement carrying on from where we were before in the previous lessons. So final step, let's do a mix and export of it. Now that we have our compressor set with a little bit of clipping happening, that's lighting up a little bit of clipping there, and the limiter set like that, we can turn up the input gain until we see some, you can turn up this input gain until we see it really triggering here a bit more, like this here. This is what's being clipped and reduced in the limiter. And yeah, you can see at 0 it's it's not reclipping, turning it up to 1 or 2 dB like that. It is a bit. Yeah, so in terms of export, this is where, generally speaking, you would say, if you're exporting it for a master to have mastering done to it, you don't want to have the track clipped and smashed, you know, by a limiter or compressor super hard. You know, you can see we're doing a little bit of clipping and limiting and compressing here as part of our, you know, sound design of just getting the different channels and instruments to sound how we want them to. But the overall output of the track, you know, you don't want to be sending something for mastering that is like super smashed like this, like, you know, really being clipped by the limiter like that. That's why I like this, you know, Pro EQ or Fab Filter Pro L limiter like this, because it has a visual representation. You know, you can see what you are limiting here. You can see the peaks. You can see your sound here and see the limiting that's happening. You can see as you turn it up how much you are clipping it, like that. And so 1.7, let's double click and call it 2, you know, and see that. And see, like, okay, there. That is not, you know, a huge amount of limiting, being it's not like completely smashing it, you know, to where if you were sending it to something to be mastered, now you could have just a very little bit of limiting, clipping like that to it, you know, like 1 or 1.5, just a little bit of limiting being done like that, knowing that the mastering engineer is, you know, going to do a lot better job of limiting and maximizing the track than you are, and you're leaving that headroom, that space for them to do that. But for a demo purpose, or for just hearing the sound for, you know, you and your buddies, or if you're wanting to play the demo in a DJ mix yourself, then you can push the limiter a lot more to achieve the competitive loudness level you want. And by also pushing the limiter is also a mixing technique that works really well to hear. You know, if you push your limiter up and really maximize and smash the track, what starts to happen to it? Like, are there certain parts that start to sound like shit? You know, things that start to fall apart and distort and all that. We'll tell you stuff about your mix as well. So you can also push that a lot harder like this. You know, say if I was wanting to DJ this demo in a set or something. You know, you could push it quite a bit more like that. So with your chosen amount of limiting being applied, then you want to turn off any other effects you have coming after that. Like here, I've got my headphone modeling software and my streaming plugin and stuff here. You would want to turn all that stuff off and then set your main master channel output at 0. And then you're ready to export by going back and checking, you know, your end, where your project is. Ends at 145, you know, and then doing your export audio video settings here. Yeah, exporting your main master channel here, and yeah, and exporting it there. And that's the way that you would get up to making a mix down and exporting a mix. With different levels of limiting applied for different purposes. Yeah, okay, cool. We kind of quick buzz through all that in, you know, a little more than an hour and a half. And I hope you guys enjoyed that session. So again, if you have any questions or any comments or anything like that, you know, feel free to ask. Don't hesitate to hit me up and reach out. And of course, we will go over I'll do future sessions that are a lot more in-depth with things like mixing and other things like that that obviously have a lot more depth to them. But I hope this session gave you a good overview of advancing the process to the next level from what we came with before, from doing a real basic arrangement session before. Now we got into creating more specific individual unique instruments and sounds, creating an arrangement with them, getting into creating a mix down, and doing an export at different levels for different purposes. And yeah. So the discussion regarding techniques and specifics can obviously go on at length. The idea is that by using these fundamental processes, what you are doing will never be wrong or flawed, and you can progress into more advanced techniques and details with knowledge of what a correct process and fundamental understanding looks like. Like, why are you limiting? Why are you compressing? What does that do? How do you set up a track in these channels to be balanced in the right way for the outcome that you want? All that stuff. Techniques and ideas in creative processes can become very subjective and personal. That is why I'm covering the fundamental theories rather than teaching you to do things my way, quote unquote. And you can develop your own personal approaches to things based on first knowing what you're doing and understanding these concepts, these fundamentals. Essentially, it's information presented in a way that I think I would have benefited from greatly when I started out making music, and I'm sharing it in a simple and straightforward way to spare the time also spent sifting through information online or something that is, stuff that's blown up into content to generate more viewing on social media, etc., things like that. There are lots of really good resources out there and tutorials, of course, but I'm doing my best to present this these steps of information and progression in a very clear and concise, in a direct way. So yeah, again, as always, if you have any questions, comments, etc., don't hesitate to speak out and reach out, and hope you enjoyed the session today. Thank you. Oh, first, before I quit, I wanted to take a look at our export. Let's just throw in another audio channel there and go to our wherever we exported that music. And there we go. Boom. Let's drop that, track in there. You can see it's definitely limited and maximized, but as you zoom in, you can see it's not totally crushed. You still have some dynamic range between all these, bass and percussion hits here. But as you zoom out, you can see the look of that limited and maximized track, the breakdown in the middle. And yeah, there's our result, So thanks, guys. Again, thanks for joining us here. And yeah, like I said, any questions or anything, hit me up. So, all right, thanks.